Thank you, everybody, for the invitation to be here today. I think my message is going to come from a slightly different perspective, but it resonates with everything that has been said up to now. My name is Rosa Fernandez, and I'm currently Associate Professor in the Division of Global Sustainable Development at the University of Warwick. But I joined relatively recently, so my journey towards net zero has been quite long, but started somewhere else. So what I would like to cover today is a little bit of what I have been doing in my research journey and where I am now, which has changed quite considerably because I'm an economist by training, and I started looking at how climate change was affecting my country of origin, Spain. And I tried to look at the possible scenarios for energy mixes in the future, not so distant future now of 2030 and 2050. So in connection with what somebody has said before, and to understand part of my motivation, I come from Asturias, the coal mining region that was mentioned before for the system of cooling and heating. And I grew up with constant mining strikes, news about coal miners dying in accidents very frequently, and the lifestyle of that people. Which, because of the health consequences of their activity, they had to retire very early, those who survived, of course, which had social, economic, and environmental impacts. So that's part of my motivation to embark on this journey about how we can find different sources of energy and how the economics and the politics of it are connected. So most of my current research has been taking place through my belonging to UASIS, the Association for Contemporary European Studies, where I've been a member of a research network, the Governance of Sustainability, and I currently lead another funded network on the role of Europe in global challenges, climate change and sustainable development. So I'm going to just look at some of the results that previous research gave, and this is not sure if you will be able to see it correctly. But one of the reasons why I was focusing on investments and the energy sector is because when looking at what companies in Spain have been doing, I realized that the energy sector was always the one that was lagging behind. And in this case, what I could see very clearly is that there was no investment in Spain, proper investment in considerable amounts of money in this sector till actually the entry into force of the Kyoto Protocol in 2005. And the energy companies in Spain and in other countries, including the UK, have always managed to exert a big lobby power towards governments. And one of the things that I could see in the case of Spain is that when, for the first transition period and the first period of the Kyoto Protocol, 2008-2012, the national allocation plans for the emission trading systems were allocated, what the Spanish government was doing was to present the proposal for the plan to the European Commission, and then when the European Commission said, no, that's not good enough, go back to the drawing board, they sent a new proposal that was compliant with what the European Commission wanted, but afterwards they didn't have to go back, and they modified the actual plan to provide even more permissions or allowances to the energy companies in particular, by reducing the reserve quota that initially should exist. So there has been always this interest on me about why energy and environment in terms of policies seem to have been confrontational, to say the least, and what are the influences of policies and politics. So I continued my research, and one of the things that you can see in that map is that for the period up to 2013, 2014, most of Spain as a country was eligible for structural funds from the European Union. And what I wanted to see is to which extent there was any influence on how Spain was allocating the budget and what it spent on environmental protection in the national budget or in regional budget, depending on which political party was in government. So I look at many things that could influence that situation, including being recipient of EU funding that up until the 2004 enlargement, Spain was the biggest recipient of funds. And I found out that no, the EU funding was really not something that mattered too much. Unemployment was always the biggest variable influencing those decisions. And who was in power at regional level of government and at national level of government definitely had an influence, particularly if the party in power in the national government was different from the party in power in the regional government. So it took many years to have this actually published, but you have the paper there with the initial findings, but I wanted to extend this beyond Spain. So I've been doing some analysis, in this case more qualitative, with how different EU member states try to get out of the economic crisis of 2007 and 2008, depending on who was the party in power and which type of political alliances and distribution of government obligations existed in the country. And one of the things that could be observed is that apart from Spain, the countries that receive bailout had green budgeting, if you want to call them, or green economy approaches that were coming from the EU. So the EU was demanding these countries for change. And most of them did not have a green party, for instance, and definitely most of them did not have an integration of environmental and energy policies. If you go to the Nordic countries, for instance, who have always been praised for their environmental credentials and defense, one of the things that you perhaps can observe at the top is that the political system was slightly different, where there is more than a bipartite system, a multi-party system, and coalitions are very frequent. And then what you see is that these green economy and green budgeting approaches come from the embedded internal environmental conscience. And then I wanted to compare two countries that took very, very different approaches, the UK and Germany. And please note that this refers to the situation before the coalition government here in the UK. And as you can see, they had both countries very different approaches to get out of the crisis. But what became very apparent to me is that where you have governments that include more members in terms of more political parties, more views, there is higher environmental commitment. And if there is governments that do not govern in majority, there are more opportunities for more voices to be heard and more interest to be taken into consideration. So in general, even if this could take somebody to think that that will create confusion and lack of action, in the case of environmental matters, has not been the case. I've been also working on the supranational level and what the EU has been doing in terms of its messages. And what I consider contradictions towards these messages of net zero and climate neutrality and so on with its energy policy and decarbonization targets, where you have on one side the defense for renewable energies, but on the other side you have the directive asking each countries to keep a minimum of reserves in crude oil. This is going a little bit forward in time, and what we see is that even if there is high-level commitment from the European institutions, what has happened in the last 5-6 years is that countries have been more concerned about their own national interests. And while, for instance, in the case of France, there has been an advocacy for more renewable and at the defense of carbon taxes in Germany, the last election with Merkel as candidate. So messages more concern about the coal miners in Germany. So this is where I have been working on for quite some time. And at the moment, I have been involved in 2 different consortia that applied for Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe funding. We were not successful, but thank you. But we have kept in touch, and we are a very committed group of researchers, definitely interdisciplinary. And one of the things that we have been looking at is the quintuple helix model of innovation, which is connected with what the previous speakers have been talking about. And my particular case, what I've been focusing is on participations of other actors beyond governments and companies, and how, for instance, the acceptance of renewable energy projects is much more connected with what is happening at the local level and the community level. And only if you have the commitment and the approval of the local actors, those projects become successful. The other branch of my research that is less connected to energy, and in this case, I had 4 different small grants from Essential, a community interest company that is in charge of the distribution of free school meals in schools, and the University of Chester. We have been looking at the impact of holiday activity and food provision during the summer holidays initially, but I've been looking also at Easter holidays and February school breaks and so on and so forth, to look between the connection of food activity, school performance, and the access of people to food and to cooking. And that's the link with energy, where in this case, it has been interviews online or face-to-face and visits to different centers before the COVID pandemic started. And the reports with the results are published online in the website of Essential, so they are publicly available. And just to conclude, currently I'm continue looking into these areas. I'm finishing a book on the economic aspects of the sustainability transition in Europe, looking at what the European Green Deal means for it. And I also wonder if net zero is enough, because I think it's a minor bad, but I think we should and we could be more ambitious. I have seen that a lot of people here work in their respective areas of expertise, but I think this research into net zero needs to be more transdisciplinary. And for me, echoing the message of the previous speaker, the economy should be part of the picture, but not the one that for the moment has been taking the domain, and it's more important to do things for the people who live in the planet and hear their voices. So thanks for your attention, and I will be happy to answer questions.